Hello there and welcome to another Lost Media video. However, this one is far more different, as this time we're going to be looking at perhaps the most infamous Lolcow of them all, Chris Chan. Initially, this video was going to be a general Lolcow Lost Media video, such as the Missing King Cobra JFS videos, or Cyrex videos, Daniel Larson videos, namely older unarchived videos of them, but I thought that would be somewhat repetitive and boring, so instead I decided to concentrate on Chris Chan. The reason for that is Chris Chan has plenty to discuss. So in this video we're going to go through and very briefly cover some of the most well-known Chris Chan Lost Media. I hope you enjoy. Perhaps the most infamous of the Lost Media, this was a feature-length documentary created by a film student called Joseph Draft. The film was to concentrate on Chris and the long-term effect the trolling had on him. The film had interviews with the likes of Megan Stroger, Chris, Barbara, and even Gino Samuel. It was to be a rather ambitious project. However, as of 2024, only the trailer, the intro, and various snippets are available to watch online. Unfortunately, the project was riddled with controversy. The project was put on Kickstarter with a tag of $20,000, which caught the ire of the KiwiFarms, who began to criticize the paywall, especially as the film was already complete. It seemed very fishy, especially as the Kickstarter also had no details of how the money was to be used. Criticism continued and a Q&A thread was opened on the farms to discuss the project, but instead more and more criticism was levied at Draft over the way he was handling everything. Then came the day Draft decided to call it quits, abandoning the project and proceeding to dox himself, then claimed to have destroyed the drives containing the films, with images to prove that he had destroyed the hard drives. It was revealed that the reason why Draft decided to destroy the drives of the film was because of infighting behind the scenes with editing. He also felt too stressed about the project, supposedly. An example of this was with the Megan interview. In the Megan interview, it was stated that Megan had stated that she would like to reconnect with Chris. However, Draft found this to be too corny, too soppy and cliche, and wanted it cut. It was also said that Megan apparently had cold feet and wanted the interview cut, but these conflicted reports and unreliable filmmaker means that we won't really know the truth for sure. Despite this, however, the trailer still exists, as does the first few seconds of the documentary. Other clips have resurfaced over the years, albeit in very low quality. It has been said that the film does still exist, and given clips have resurfaced over time, it's possible someone may have a copy or at least a recording of it. It's unlikely that Draft would go ahead and destroy everything, as for starters, it's a waste of money and time. Not only that, but most people creating any form of content are going to save it on a backup, on various backups for that matter. This goes for film in particular. The documentary's biggest factors are of course the Megan interview, as well as interviews with Chris and his mother Barb, that could be potentially very interesting to see if these ever see the light of day. A more morbid and disgusting Lost Media video, but also one of the more famous. It's that of the Julie Reveals Herself video. Sure, we have the audio of this particular call, but this was a video call with visuals that are currently lost. So for context behind the infamous video, we need to understand the Julie saga. Julie was in fact a 13-year-old boy, more famously known under the alias Blue Spike. This was meant to be another fake so-called heartsuite for Chris, similar to the other trolling attempts in the past. Over the course of a few months, Julie would get Chris to do things, such as admit that he was gay, or more famously get Chris to rescue Julie from her evil brother Max, which resulted in Chris going on a very long, almost 2-day-long trip to Ohio for a girl that doesn't exist. Chris was also manipulated into recording a sex tape of him having sex with his sex doll while screaming Julie's name, as well as getting Chris to admit to him using anal beads and other sex toys on himself. Most conversations with Julie and Chris were phone sex, in which Chris would masturbate over Julie, making sexual noises and moans to entice Chris to do some more. One of the funniest instances to come from this was the Bob Walks In audio, where Chris's elderly father Bob walks in on Chris masturbating to Julie, after being told by trolls that Chris was about to kill himself on camera. Bob then threatened to, quote, cut down the internet, quote, with Chris pleading in the background. The rest is, of course, history. However, the Judy saga would come to a brutal end on the 3rd of March 2009. Here, Blue Spike mocked Chris by claiming that he would sell his PSN account to eBay and sell proceeds to 4chan and Encyclopedia Dramatica. Blue Spike continued to threaten Chris and claimed he would send Julie to Europe and make Billy Mays the mayor of Quickville. But things got worse as the call continued, with Blue Spike ordering Chris to cut up his medallion and shove it up his ass. Reportedly, Chris had gotten shit all over his hands while doing this. Blue Spike takes things further by desiring that Chris either hurts himself or burns down his house. And while all this was happening, other trolls who were recording and listening in on the call, with Clyde Cash himself even telling Blue Spike to stop on multiple occasions. The grand finale eventually came when Blue Spike announced that he'll get Julie to talk to Chris. However, once Julie arrived, she had an announcement to make. She was in fact a 13-year-old boy, and Chris had been duped into having phone sex with a minor over the course of 3 to 4 months. Blue Spike mocked Chris further and threatened to leak the video of him shoving the broken medallion up his ass across the internet. Whilst the audio from the call exists, the disturbing visuals of Chris performing such acts have never been released. Not that anyone would want to see Chris shoving something up his shitty ass. There is rumour that this recording does not even exist. There's a possibility that the reason that the video has never resurfaced is perhaps due to its disturbing content, and even the fact that it could have some legal consequences if released. Blue Spike is still around to this day and is currently a user on the KiwiFarms, and based on the question asked in 2017 about whether he would do anything like this again, he stated he would not. Therefore, Blue Spike did have a video of himself, or did have the video himself, but I doubt he would release it. For now, we do have the audio, and perhaps we should be thankful that we don't have any disgusting video that has resurfaced. The third most infamous lost Chris-Chan media is that of the so-called black tapes. This was a call between the Jackie Troll and Chris soon after Bob Chandler, who was Chris-Chan's father for the uninitiated, who had passed away. The call featured one of the very rare times Chris-Chan had expressed genuine emotion and was reportedly crying over the death of his father, sounding very distressed. It was shocking even to trolls who had copies of the audio, and an agreement was made by those involved to never share these tapes. Therefore, it is unlikely that it will ever be released, if not outright deleted or lost on an old piece of hardware. But the information about the black tapes is all available, as trolls recorded the conversation and it has been all documented on the Quickie. It is unlikely these very same trolls are active anymore and that even copies survive. Though some of the autism papers exist, many are lost and presumed destroyed. For those who don't know, these papers offered an insight to Chris's mental well-being, as well as an insight to his life and experiences. The papers are some of the most valued relics of Chris-Chan due to their information, and how it gives us an objective point of view to Chris and his autism, rather than a false narrative he would often portray. However, only one of these papers exists, the 2004 paper. The reason for this was because Chris had given it over to one of his potential love interests, Casey. He emailed them, and as a result it was archived for all to see years later. The issue is, the 2004 evaluation was just one paper of many. The others have not resurfaced. Not even the ones that are created more recently as a result of Chris's incest case, which have never resurfaced despite there being several over the past few years. One of the primary factors because of this was the 2014 Branchland fire that destroyed much of the Chandler's artifacts, and most likely many of the autism papers were destroyed as well. With Chris seemingly never desiring to release these papers, most likely because it would annihilate his make-believe perspective, the fact that the fire, and in this case of the evaluation performed under after the incest arrest, is highly unlikely these papers will ever see the light of day. Chris has made many websites during the early days. His Sonichu websites is perhaps the most well known. However, one of his earlier websites was a fan site based on Pokémon. The site was nothing spectacular, as it was mostly a place where Chris could share news and links on Pokémon which Chris had made up. Ironically, unlike many of his future websites, the site was far better in design, with it being based upon source code templates rather than whatever mess he would go on to use for his later websites. One of the more amusing aspects was the guest book on the website that seemed highly positive. However, it was determined that these replies were in fact all from his parents. The site was up for a short period of time during 1999 as Chris became quickly bored of it and moved on to his second Poke site, It was also known that the website had a Spanish translation of it. As of 2024, only 3 pages of this website exists thanks to the archive, with much of the website lost to time and virtually impossible to recover. One of Chris's more infamous creations was his Christian Western Chandler. Yep, I'm on TV DVD. This DVD featured archives of his Lego Mario Kart stop-motion movies, his Song of Christian, TV news recordings of him winning the Sonic sweepstake, and playing Pokémon with children. The Animal Crossing gameplay featured in the Nintendo magazine, Harvey Birdman commercial, the Future Message, and so much more. Initially, the DVDs were released limited, but eventually the contents were bled online thanks to Chris handing it over to trolls pretending to be potential heartsuites for him. In 2014, the director's cut was revealed by Chris and subsequently leaked. However, Chris revealed there happens to be a 6-hour cut of the DVD, one that has not resurfaced. It's highly likely that either Chris is making it up or the footage is of things we've already seen. That said, Chris has currently not handed over the footage to any troll, nor have trolls sought after it desperately, and those who have gotten closer to Chris have never seen, asked, or leaked it. Chris and his education has always been an iffy subject, as Chris has lied about almost everything that's happened during his education. For example, he claims in elementary school he was abused and tormented by his teachers, as well as accusing a principal for being gay and molesting him, which is all likely fabricated and possibly made up by Chris's parents to shield him from criticism. Chris also claims that high school was the happiest period of his life, ignoring the fact that his parents set up gal pals to be friends with him, or the fact that when he was on the special bus, he was beaten up by a disabled person. He claims also he was a part of the honour roll with good grades, which later was revealed to be much lower than he claimed. Then there's college, where he met Mary Lee Walsh, who ruined his life by telling him off for his attraction sign, because, well, that's a normal thing. Chris's perception on education varies, and his point of view is most likely made up in his head. It's likely that many of the events he discussed and talked about probably did happen, but in much different ways. These report cards, however, are something of value as they hold insight to the truth about Chris and his education, similar to the autism papers giving insights to Chris's mental health and obviously his decline. If ever rediscovered, it could hold all sorts of information. Really could be something arguably that all of the other lost media discussed in this video, probably more important than any of the others. Possibly more important than the autism papers themselves. The report cards are not treated with much respect from Chris, however, as he reported in his mailbag and he could not access them, and most likely because they were trapped under the mountain pile of litter in his household, or perhaps locked away by his parents as to prevent Chris from leaking potentially damning information. To make matters worse, the house fire of 2014 could have likely destroyed these report cards, and given the lack of care for many objects from the Chandlers, it seems these report cards are gone forever, unless one day Chris randomly shows them off. If you watched or seen many of Chris's older content, you'll notice a wall full of Pokémon cards, or at the very least, custom Pokémon cards with his terrible drawings. The majority of these cards are known and have been archived thanks to images, the Sonichu comics having some of them, and the Quickie having an entire article on the matter with each one identified. However, not every single card is known, as there are 7 cards which are unknown. These cards have still never been identified, although there is speculation on what they could be. For example, a Tomville one that may have been taken down. However, just like with some of the other lost artifacts, the house fire of 2014 may have destroyed a majority of the cards, though it was revealed by Chris in 2017 and 2018 respectively that some of the cards did indeed survive. He began selling them, although it would seem that the missing 7 have not resurfaced. One of the more humorous moments in Chris Chan's history is when Chris tried to get Nintendo to create a series of Sonichu games, and his way of impressing Shigeru Miyamoto and Reggie Fils-Aimé was to create a PowerPoint proving why Sonichu is a viable series to make games for. The Sonichu Chronicles was a 17-page PowerPoint presentation in which Chris was elaborating about lore and details about Sonichu, and all the positive buzz surrounding the made-up world, given little to no advice to the actual games he was meant to be proposing. What makes this lost media entry interesting is the actual PowerPoint was available online for all to see for years, and a transcript of the slides have been documented on the Quickie. Not only that, but a low quality and poorly filmed shot of the slides, presented by Chris himself, is in existence thanks to videos that Chris has made. However, the actual PowerPoint in high quality and in its original format is no longer available, as a result of the archive for it not being properly backed up, and only a single page exists, save for the ones documented by Chris's low quality video. What happens when Lolcows collide? Well, you get this. Keffel, an infamous internet degenerate, and Lolcow decided to interview Chris Chan in January 2024, and the interview was uploaded, or at least a heavily edited version of it. The interview consists of Chris being asked questions, then either lying, exaggerating, or trying to sound philosophical in his own retarded way. He does bring up the past, such as Blue Spike and falling for obvious troll girlfriends. The interview for the most part offers nothing of massive value, and was more or less made so Keffels could get her 15 minutes of fame in Christery. So why am I wasting time discussing this, and if the interview is available, why discuss it at all? Well, it's because the full interview is only available behind Keffels' ridiculous paywall of $100,000. Yes, that's right, she's offering the full interview for $100,000. Which of course no one in their right mind would ever pay for, especially if it's coming from Keffels, who of all people has a reputation lower than dog shite. Given how long Chris has been known to the internet and how many trolls have gotten to him, it's rather obvious that over the years, through the thousands of correspondence with Chris, that many conversations would get lost to time. For example, Miscreants and Chris's many interactions have been documented. However, there are some that have never been released publicly. According to both Chris and the man in the pickle suit, who claims that some interactions with Clyde Cash and Liquid Chris have never been released. Between the 5th of April and the 4th of September, various emails between Jackie and Chris have never been released, or at least the ones not containing Ag Benson Leary, with the missing emails being lost to time due to be considered irrelevant. One of Chris's creepier interactions was with Jacob Sockness, and as it turns out, there were two DMs that have not been publicly revealed in their entirety. The first one was from the 28th of August 2019, and the second was from the 17th of July of 2020. Another is a part of a series of audio files created by Joshua Wise as part of the Idea Guys' efforts to manipulate Chris. They created a series of audio files using manipulated audios of various medias and of Chris in order to trick and convince Chris to go through their activities. Only one of these audio files have been released, known as Red Forest, where audio lines from Hyperdimension Neptunia and Payday video game series were spliced and edited to trick Chris and falsify his beliefs. In fact, one of the missing audio files was splicing of Chris's voice to make it seem like his alternate universe self was speaking to save the people of Quickville. Other audio most likely featured the same splicing of media and Chris's vocals, and given Chris is a gullible retard, he obviously found it convincing and proceeded to believe everything sent his way without question. It's highly likely that some of the Idea Guys' influence on Chris's delusions and comics may have been inspired by the lost audio files. While trying to impress Vanessa Hudgens, not the real one, Chris sent various videos expressing his strength, as well as the audio of the infamous "I Got a Fish" video. But there was an extra document from Chris, which was a thank you letter, which has never seen the light of day. One of the funniest calls has to be with the father call, with Chris in a call with one of his troll love interest, Casey's father. The call was not actually her real father, but another troll believed to be Liquid Chris. Here he has slated Chris on his laziness and overall attitude to things, especially if Chris wanted to woo his daughter. But there was a second father call, though this father call was with Jackie's father, another troll. In this call, a supposedly drunk father had a call with Chris. It would seem that Chris may have insulted her father at one point, comparing him to Hank Hill, but at the same time, Jackie's father was reportedly mean to Chris. The contents are unknown about this call, and the email exchanges between Jackie and Chris are the only things to get from this lost call. It's also revealed that her father may have gone ahead and prank called Chris over the following few days. It's also because of this call that the disturbing and infamous cake farts video was made, as Jackie wanted Chris to do the video as a result of this father call. Dylan Thomas was a Chris tuber before everything came crashing down around him. It was revealed that Chris and Dylan had several DM exchanges with each other, with the fallout of the incest accusation being archived. However, DMs from before December 2019 are known to have taken place, with only a singular screenshot from the 23rd of December 2019, whereby Chris talked to Dylan about Courtney, a woman who redesigned Sonichu's characters and seemingly got on Chris's nerves. Only a small snippet of this conversation was saved as Dylan, after a massive fallout with other YouTubers and with the KiwiFarms, proceeded to delete everything, including his own channel, meaning these messages were never archived. Panda Haley was another fake girlfriend for Chris, and during the 27th of September 2008, Chris and Panda Haley engaged in cybersex with each other over Skype. Whilst transcripts exist, only a 5-minute snippet has been properly archived, with the rest lost. Similarly, the Blue Spike PSN chat 3.7, according to the title, has the first half of the call available, but the second half, with Bob walks in and chats with the trolls about his health and the Cherokee heritage that the channel supposedly have, is all lost. And lastly, Chris, having such trouble with the trolls, would post videos expressing his hatred for them. Whilst these videos from Chris exist, video responses by the trolls often do not. For example, Chris's 10240209 video at Greg Mays exists, but the initial video that Greg Mays posted does not. Similarly, Mal's response to Aspertu is a horrendous joke video is also lost. Clyde Cash's response to No More Jokes is also lost. And Casey saying the second half of A Whole New World is also missing. So that's just a few examples of lost Chris Chan media. As you can see, there was a whole range of items from documents, videos, audios, websites. When you're as big as a Lolcow as Chris and as well documented, there's bound to be some things that will be lost to time. That said, some things could be rediscovered. For example, we may still get the odd clip from the Chris Chan vs. the Internet documentary resurfacing from time to time, and some media could be rediscovered more easily than others. The biggest issues that I find comes down to a few factors. The fact that Chris, Barb and Bob were terrible in keeping things tidy or preserved, the house fire of 2014, and in the case of documents from Chris's earlier life, the lack of internet or online database archives means that they probably weren't preserved. And in terms of the trolls, many early trolls would fuck around with Chris before they retired. They wouldn't wean or A-log Chris. They would do their duty, and once they got bored or felt the time was right, they'd retire. And in doing so, much of their content was deleted or left to rot in the wilderness we call the internet. Whilst I do enjoy watching Lolcow content and videos, this will probably be one of the only few videos I'll do on the subject of Lolcows, and especially on Chris Chan, save for the odd parodies or maybe something else I might do later down the line. That said, I hope you enjoyed this Lost Media video, and I'll see you next time.